Listen to me very carefully. Right now, at this exact moment, there are 100,000 soldiers, Chinese and Indian troops, staring at each other across frozen Himalayan peaks with loaded weapons. Fighter jets on standby, missile batteries locked and loaded. And here's the part that should terrify you. These two countries are supposed to be allies. They're both members of BRICS, the coalition that half the internet thinks is about to overthrow the US dollar, dethrone America, and usher in a new world order. But I'm about to show you something the mainstream media won't tell you. Something the BRICS cheerleaders desperately don't want you to know. This isn't a rising empire, it's a zombie, too big to die, too broken to live. And by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly why the most hyped geopolitical alliance of the 21st century is actually eating itself from the inside out. Hit that subscribe button right now on Bell and Brief, because what you're about to learn will completely change how you see the global power structure. And trust me, you'll want to be subscribed when I drop the next investigation. Let's go. Welcome to Bell and Brief. I'm your analyst, and today we're performing an autopsy on the most dangerous myth in modern geopolitics. The myth goes like this. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, plus their new additions, represents the future. A multipolar world. The end of American dominance. The death of the dollar. A new financial system backed by gold, powered by the Global South, and destined to eclipse the G7. You've seen the headlines? BRICS to launch gold-backed currency. 40% of the world's population joins anti-Western bloc. The dollar's days are numbered. But here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to take you beyond the headlines, beyond the hype, beyond the clickbait. We're going to examine BRICS the way a surgeon examines a body, system by system, organ by organ. We're going to look at the hard data across three critical theaters. Theater A, strategic incompatibility, why the military rivalry between China and India makes NATO look like a love fest. Theater B, economic fantasy, why the so-called BRICS currency is economically impossible and why Russia is already drowning in worthless rupees. Theater C, demographic collapse, why China's population crisis means this rising power is actually entering a death spiral. And here's my thesis, what I call the zombie alliance framework. BRICS is not a coherent empire. It's a Frankenstein monster, stitched together from incompatible parts, animated by resentment of the West, but fundamentally paralyzed by internal contradictions. It's a coalition where the two biggest members have their militaries aimed at each other, where authoritarian regimes are asked to surrender monetary sovereignty, where the fastest shrinking population on Earth is supposed to lead a new world order. This is a deep dive, no fluff, no filler. Just hard geopolitical analysis, economic data, and strategic truth. Because by the time we're done, you'll understand why BRICS isn't the future. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when you build an alliance on grievance instead of genuine strategic alignment. Let's start with the most fundamental crack in the foundation. You've seen the photos. Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi shaking hands at BRICS summits, smiling for cameras, signing communiques about multipolarity and cooperation. Now let me show you what's happening 15,000 feet up in the Himalayas, while those cameras are flashing. As of 2026, right now, China and India maintain between 50,000 and 60,000 combat-ready troops along the line of actual control. This isn't peacekeeping. This is preparation for war. We're talking advanced fighter jet deployments, long-range missile batteries, electronic warfare systems, forward operating bases in sub-zero conditions. In June 2020, Chinese and Indian soldiers fought hand-to-hand with clubs, stones, and fists in the Galwan Valley. 20 Indian soldiers died. China never released its casualty count. This wasn't ancient history. This was 4 years ago. And here's the critical detail everyone misses. This border dispute is not about a few miles of frozen rock. It's about something far more fundamental. China claims roughly 90,000 square kilometers of territory that India controls, an area about the size of Portugal. India claims 38,000 square kilometers that China controls. Now ask yourself, can you build a genuine alliance, a real coalition with mutual defense and shared sacrifice, when your two largest members are in an active territorial dispute backed by military force? This is where we need to introduce what I call the Frankenstein mechanism. BRICS isn't an organism, it's a collection of incompatible body parts stitched together, each pulling in a different direction. The left arm, China. China's strategic goal is clear. Use BRICS as a battering ram against American hegemony, a legitimization tool for authoritarian governance models, a market for Chinese exports and overcapacity, a challenge to the dollar-dominated financial system. Beijing wants a bloc that votes as one, speaks as one, and acts as a counterweight to NATO and the G7. The right arm, India. India's strategic goal is completely different. Strategic autonomy, Don't become a Chinese vassal, extract concessions from both the West and China. Position itself as the democratic alternative to authoritarian China. Maintain access to Western technology, capital, and markets. India doesn't want to destroy the Western order. India wants a seat at the table of the Western order. This is the anatomical flaw. The two arms are pulling in opposite directions. Let me give you concrete proof that India is actively undermining Chinese strategic goals while being China's BRICS partner. Digital warfare. India has banned over 300 Chinese apps since 2020, including TikTok, WeChat, AliExpress, PUBG Mobile, dozens of others. This isn't symbolic. This is digital containment of Chinese soft power, manufacturing defection. India is actively recruiting Western manufacturers to leave China. Apple now produces roughly 7% of its iPhones in India, with plans to hit 25%. Samsung has its largest mobile factory in the world. In India, Western nations are using India as China plus one, the backup supply chain, military alignment. While China deepens ties with Pakistan, India's main rival, India has joined the Quad, US, Japan, Australia, India, increased joint military exercises with the US-purchased Western weapon systems, shared intelligence on Chinese military movements. Here's the brutal truth. India uses BRICS membership as leverage against both China and the West. When the US doesn't offer favorable terms, India waves the BRICS card. Maybe we'll go with Beijing. When China pushes too hard, India waves the Western card. Maybe we'll deepen the Quad partnership. This isn't alliance behavior, this is sophisticated geopolitical arbitrage. Let me make this crystal clear with a comparison. NATO has Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. When the US invoked Article 5 after 9/11, NATO allies deployed to Afghanistan. They sent their soldiers to die for American security. That's a real alliance. That requires trust, shared values, and genuine strategic alignment. Now imagine this scenario. China and India go to war over the LAC. Does Brazil send troops to help China? Does South Africa deploy its navy to support India? Does Russia commit forces to defend either side? Of course not. The idea is absurd. BRICS has no mutual defense pact, no collective security guarantee, no mechanism for one member to defend another. You know what BRICS actually has? A memorandum of understanding about cooperation and vague statements about multipolarity. That's not an alliance. That's a talk shop with military rivals in the same room. And here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Can you name a single historical example of a successful long-term alliance where the two most powerful members were active military rivals? I'll wait. Drop your answer below. Because this fundamental strategic incompatibility isn't a bug in BRICS, it's the core feature. And it gets worse when we look at the economic structure. Let's talk about the sexiest BRICS narrative, the coming gold-backed currency that will destroy the dollar. You've seen the videos. BRICS to launch R5 currency backed by gold. 40 countries ready to ditch the dollar. The end of American financial hegemony. Millions of views, thousands of comments, endless speculation, and almost all of it is economically illiterate. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because we need to understand why a BRICS currency isn't just unlikely. It's impossible under current political conditions. And the reason comes down to one of the most fundamental concepts in international economics, something called the Impossible Trinity. Pay close attention, because this is where the entire BRICS currency narrative falls apart. In macroeconomics, there's an iron law called the Impossible Trinity, also known as the trilemma. It states that a country can only choose two of the following three options: fixed exchange rate, a common currency or pegged currency; free capital flow, money can move in and out freely; independent monetary policy, the ability to print money and set interest rates. You can have any two. You cannot have all three. This isn't political opinion. This is mathematical certainty. Let me show you why this destroys the BRICS currency dream. Option 1. BRICS chooses a common currency plus free capital flow. This means BRICS nations surrender independent monetary policy. They give up the ability to print money when they have a crisis. When COVID hit, what did every country do? Printed money. When Russia faced sanctions, what did Putin do? Printed rubles. When China's property market collapsed, what did Beijing do? Printed yuan. Now imagine telling Xi Jinping, you can no longer print money. You must surrender monetary control to a BRICS central bank in Johannesburg or Sao Paulo. Do you think Xi Jinping, the most powerful authoritarian leader in the world, is going to give a central bank in South Africa control over Chinese monetary policy? Do you think Vladimir Putin is going to let Brazil's economic team decide whether Russia can print rubles during a crisis? Option 2. BRICS chooses a common currency, plus independent monetary policy. This means you have to restrict capital flow. You need capital controls, walls that prevent money from leaving the country. But this is exactly what BRICS nations are trying to escape. They complain about Western sanctions and want more financial freedom, not less. Capital controls would make the BRICS currency worthless for international trade because businesses could not easily convert it or move it. Option 3. BRICS chooses free capital flow, plus independent monetary policy. This means you cannot have a fixed exchange rate or common currency. Each nation keeps its own currency with floating exchange rates, which is exactly what we have now. This is the status quo. Here's what the BRICS currency enthusiasts don't understand. The euro works, barely, because European nations are democracies with some level of shared values and institutions. Even then, the euro has caused massive problems. See Greek debt crisis. But the Eurozone nations surrendered sovereignty. They gave up their independent central banks. When Greece wanted to print drachmas to escape debt, they couldn't. They no longer had drachmas. I'll apply this to BRICS. Russia is an authoritarian petrostate that needs monetary flexibility to manage sanctions. China is a command economy that uses monetary policy as a strategic weapon. India is a democracy that would never let Beijing control its currency. Brazil and South Africa have completely different economic cycles and needs. For a BRICS currency to work, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping would have to hand over control of their printing presses to a neutral central bank. Authoritarian leaders don't survive by surrendering control. They survive by maintaining absolute sovereignty over their monetary and fiscal systems. This isn't going to happen. Not in 2026, not in 2036, not ever, as long as these governments maintain their current structures. You want proof this doesn't work? We already have a case study. It's happening right now, and it's hilarious in its dysfunction. After Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Western sanctions cut Russia off from dollars and euros. So Russia made a deal with India. We'll sell you oil. You pay us in rupees. Sounds great, right? Bypass the dollar. De-dollarization in action. Except here's what happened. Russia sold billions of dollars worth of oil to India and received billions of rupees. Now, Russia has a massive pile of rupees sitting in Indian banks, but the rupee isn't fully convertible. Russia can't easily exchange those rupees for dollars, euros, or yuan to buy things on the global market. The money is essentially trapped. Russia tried to spend rupees on Indian goods, but there aren't enough high-value Indian exports that Russia actually wants. They can only buy so much tea and textiles, so what did Russia do? They demanded that India start paying in UAE dirhams, which are pegged to the US dollar. You can't make this up. Russia's attempt to escape dollar dependence ended with them demanding payment in a currency that is literally tied to the dollar. This is the liquidity trap. This is what happens when you try to trade in currencies that lack global depth and convertibility. Let me hit you with the numbers that really matter. The US dollar is involved in 88% of all global foreign exchange transactions. The Chinese yuan is involved in roughly 7%, the Indian rupee, about 1.6%, the Russian ruble, less than 1%. This is the network effect. The dollar is valuable because everyone uses it, and everyone uses it because it's valuable. To displace the dollar, you need deep liquid markets, rule of law and property rights, political stability, free convertibility, decades of institutional trust. China doesn't have number 2, number 3, or number 4. Russia doesn't have any of them. The BRICS nations combined don't have the institutional infrastructure to create a reserve currency that the world would trust with trillions of dollars. And here's my question for you. If you were a business owner who needed to hold $100 million in reserves, would you trust it to a BRICS currency controlled by a central bank with no track record? Or would you keep it in dollars, euros, or yen? Answer in the comments. Be honest. Because this brings us to the third and most devastating problem. BRICS doesn't just have an economic crisis or a strategic crisis. It has a biological crisis. We need to talk about something that doesn't make headlines, but will determine the fate of nations: demography. You cannot have a rising empire with a collapsing population. You cannot project power when your working age population is shrinking. You cannot sustain economic growth when you have more retirees than workers. And China, the engine of BRICS, is facing the worst demographic crisis of any major power in modern history. It's called the 4-2-1 problem, and it's a time bomb. China's one-child policy, enforced from 1980 to 2016, prevented an estimated 400 million births. Think about that number. That's more than the entire population of the United States, just erased from existence. This created a population structure where 4 grandparents need to be supported by 2 parents who are supported by 1 working adult, 1 person carrying the economic burden of an entire family pyramid. The result? China's population began shrinking in 2022. Not slowing, shrinking. Declining in absolute terms. Current projections suggest China's population could fall from 1.4 billion today to roughly 525 million by the end of the century. That's a loss of roughly 875 million people, 60% of the current population. Now, here's the part that makes this catastrophic. Japan also has a demographic crisis. Japan's population is old and shrinking, but Japan got rich before it got old. When Japan's demographic decline began, per capita income was over $30,000. Japan had built wealth, infrastructure, and institutions. They had savings. They had technology. China is getting old before it gets rich. China's per capita income is around $12,000, comparable to Mexico or Thailand. China is going to face Japan's demographic burden with Turkey's income level. You know what that means? Massive elderly population with insufficient pension systems, shrinking workforce unable to support retirees, collapsing consumer demand as the population ages, capital flight, as wealthy Chinese move assets abroad, social instability as the generational contract breaks. This is Japanification without the wealth, economic stagnation without the cushion of prosperity. And you cannot build a new world order when your core nation is entering demographic collapse. Here's another crack in the foundation that nobody talks about. Where do the elites of BRICS send their money and their children? Follow the money. Chinese billionaires buy real estate in London, New York, Vancouver, Sydney. Russian oligarchs stash wealth in Swiss banks and Western trusts. Indian tech founders list their companies on NASDAQ, not the Shanghai Exchange. Brazilian elites send their kids to Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, not Tsinghua or Moscow State. Follow the children. The children of Chinese Communist Party officials study at American universities. Putin's inner circle sends their families to live in the West. BRICS leaders get medical treatment in Germany, Switzerland, the US, not in each other's countries. This is the ultimate vote of no confidence. If the people running BRICS don't trust their own systems with their wealth and families, why should the rest of the world? Hard power is military might. Soft power is where the elite choose to live and invest. And overwhelmingly, BRICS elites choose the West. Finally, let's talk about the tech stranglehold that will prevent BRICS, specifically China, from achieving technological independence. Modern warfare, AI, and economic competition all depend on one thing: semiconductors. And the G7+ alliance controls 100% of the critical choke points in semiconductor production. Choke point 1, design software, EDA, controlled by US companies, Synopsys, Cadence, Mentor. Without this software, you cannot design advanced chips. China has no substitute. Choke point 2, lithography machines, controlled by ASML, Netherlands. ASML's EUV machines are required for chips below 7 near China. Cannot buy them due to export controls. China cannot build them. ASML has a 20-year technological lead. Choke point 3, materials and chemicals. Controlled by Japan, photoresists, specialty chemicals. No alternatives exist at scale choke point 4. Manufacturing controlled by Taiwan, TSMC, South Korea, Samsung, US, Intel. China's SMIC is roughly 5+ years behind on leading-edge production. Without access to sub-5 mm chips, China is locked out of next-generation AI training. Advanced military guidance systems, cutting-edge consumer electronics, quantum computing development. The West didn't just build a lead in semiconductors, they built a technological moat that China cannot cross without the very tools the West controls. This is the Silicon Curtain. And it's why China's tech independence is a fantasy. And here's my question to you. If China cannot achieve semiconductor independence, can it truly challenge Western technological dominance? Drop your thoughts in the comments because we're about to bring all three theaters together. Let me give you the strategic synthesis, the real geopolitical game being played. BRICS is not a genuine alliance designed to overthrow the Western order. BRICS is a negotiating tactic. Think of it like this. Imagine you're unhappy with your current relationship, the Western-led order. You don't actually want to break up and marry someone else, China, but you do want better treatment. So what do? You flirt with someone else, you make your partner jealous, you create leverage. That's what most BRICS nations are doing. Saudi Arabia doesn't genuinely want to abandon the US security umbrella, but by flirting with China and BRICS membership, Saudi Arabia extracts better defense commitments from Washington, more favorable arms deals, greater latitude on human rights. Criticism. India doesn't want to become a Chinese vassal. But by maintaining BRICS membership, India gains leverage with the US on trade and technology, cheap Russian oil during energy crises, a hedge against overdependence on any single power. Brazil and South Africa don't want to burn down the global financial system. But by participating in BRICS, they signal dissatisfaction with their voice in IMF, POSH, World Bank. desire for better terms in trade negotiations, willingness to explore alternatives if ignored. This is the jealous girlfriend strategy. They're not building a new house. They're negotiating for better terms in the current house. Here's the ultimate test of whether BRICS is a genuine alternative world order. If you gave the political and economic elite of BRICS nations a choice, where they could live, invest, and educate their children anywhere in the world, where would they choose? The answer is overwhelmingly London, New York, Singapore, Sydney, Vancouver, Zurich. Not Beijing, not Moscow, not each other's capitals. The revealed preference is damning. BRICS leaders talk about multipolarity and dedollarization in public speeches. Then they buy penthouses in Manhattan, send their kids to Yale, stash money in Delaware LLCs, get surgery at Johns Hopkins. This is not the behavior of people building a new world order. This is the behavior of people who want a better deal within the existing order. So here's my final thesis. BRICS is not a new Warsaw Pact. It's not the next Soviet Union. It's not an empire rising to challenge American hegemony. BRICS is a trade union of dissatisfied customers. They don't want to burn down the bank. They want a seat on the board of directors. They don't want to destroy the dollar. They want to be able to threaten its destruction to get better terms. They don't want to overthrow the Western order. They want to be taken more seriously within it. As long as the G7 maintains technological superiority, semiconductors, AI, biotech, demographic stability through immigration, institutional trust, rule of law, property rights, military dominance, NATO, alliances, forward bases, BRICS remains exactly what I've called it from the start. A zombie alliance. Scary to look at, shambling forward with momentum, occasionally groaning about de-dollarization, but fundamentally, too big to die, too dysfunctional to truly live. All right, that was hard geopolitical analysis. No fluff, no filler, just data, strategy, and truth. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person Bellum Brief is built for. Someone who wants to understand power, not just consume headlines. So here's what I need you to do. First, subscribe to Bellum Brief right now. We're building the most informed geopolitical community on YouTube. No propaganda, no cheerleading, just clear-eyed analysis of how the world actually works. If this video gave you a framework for understanding BRICS that you didn't have before, hit that subscribe button. Second, drop a comment and answer these questions. Do you think BRICS will still exist in its current form 10 years from now? Which BRICS nation do you think will leave first, and why? What topics should I investigate next? Middle East alliances, NATO expansion, the future of the dollar? I read every single comment. The best analyses get pinned. This is a community, not a lecture hall. Third, share this video. If you know someone who genuinely believes BRICS is about to overthrow the dollar, send them this video. If you have friends who want to understand geopolitics beyond Twitter hot takes, send them this video. This is the kind of analysis that does not go viral because it doesn't make people feel good, it makes them think hard. But that's exactly why it matters. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Understanding the world isn't about picking teams. It's not about cheering for the West or hoping for the East. It's about seeing the world clearly. BRICS is not the villain in some geopolitical movie. It's also not the hero coming to save the global South. It's a coalition of nations with incompatible interests, trying to navigate a world where power is still concentrated in the technological, financial, and military systems built by the West. That's not propaganda. That's not bias. That's just the data. The question is, how long can a zombie shamble forward before it finally collapses? I don't know the answer. Nobody does. But I know this. I'll be here, analyzing every step, every stumble, every geopolitical move. And if you want to be part of that journey, if you want to understand the world as it actually is, not as we wish it to be, then welcome to Bellum Brief. Subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next investigation. This is Bellum Brief. Stay sharp.